Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're here, you already know that solving high-stakes business problems isn't about guessing. It's about having a systematic, razor-sharp approach. Today, our ultimate goal is to completely elevate your problem-solving mindset. We're going to learn how to seamlessly integrate the absolute best business frameworks into a single, unstoppable investigative workflow. So, grab your mental notepad because we are getting right to work. Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're covering the problem-solving trap, the integrated workflow pipeline, a case study on customer churn, how to select the right tool, a deep dive into SaaS renewals, and finally, a quick conclusion and recap. This deliberate structure perfectly mirrors the exact organized mindset you need to tackle massive business puzzles. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the problem-solving trap, jumping to solutions. I want you to picture the modern business landscape as a messy, totally chaotic crime scene. You've got clues everywhere, but also a ton of red herrings. And honestly, professionals often make a critical, completely avoidable error right out of the gate. Really think about this for a second. Why do so many incredibly smart, experienced problem solvers completely fail when faced with complex business puzzles? You've probably seen this firsthand in your own consulting gigs or internal strategy meetings. A massive problem drops on the table, panic sets in, and immediately the room starts throwing out wild guesses, usually just hoping the loudest voice is the right one. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the contrast. The trap is that teams jump straight to solutions, or, just as dangerously, they rely entirely on a single isolated framework, like bringing only a fishbone diagram to solve a multi-million-dollar revenue leak. But the real goal, the mark of a true master, it's combining different tools in the correct, deliberate order. It's about teamwork between your frameworks. Which perfectly tees up Section 2, the integrated workflow pipeline, structure, analyze, test. If no single framework solves a complex problem on its own, well, we need a system. We need sequential teamwork. Let's walk through this precise three-step investigative timeline. First up, MISE, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. This is how we structure the problem. Think of it as drawing the chalk outline. Second, we use root cause analysis, or RCA, to analyze exactly why the problem exists. And finally, the hypothesis step, where we test those reasons with hard data. This sequence literally transforms abstract consulting concepts into a seamless, highly functional workflow pipeline. Moving right along to Section 3, case study, customer churn, applying the detective lens. Let's step out of the theoretical for a minute and announce our first real-world investigation. We're going to see exactly how this three-step pipeline operates out there in the wild. So, imagine a client comes to you, absolutely panicking because customer churn is suddenly spiking. Using Step 1, MISE, we map this initial crime scene by creating clean, non-overlapping buckets. We categorize everything into product experience, pricing and value, customer service, and competition. Doing this guarantees absolutely no potential factor is left out of our investigation. We've completely cordoned off the entire area. Next up, we deploy Step 2, RCA. As we dig into that customer service bucket, we might notice slow response times, but beware. Slow support response time is merely a symptom. Using root cause analysis, we keep digging to separate that symptom from the actual root cause, which might be underlying product defects that are triggering a massive wave of complaints. Remember, the goal isn't to ask why forever. It's to find the true origin of the fire instead of just pointing at the smoke. And then Step 3, we take that root cause insight and transform it into a highly specific, testable hypothesis. Instead of a vague feeling, we now have a concrete claim. Something like, unresolved product bugs create a negative user experience. Or maybe, uncompetitive pricing drives high-value segments away. This isn't just an opinion anymore. It's a claim we can actually take to court and prove with data. All right, Section 4, selecting the right tool, the consulting arsenal. We've seen the pipeline in action, but stepping back to review your toolkit is absolutely crucial. Because honestly, knowing when to deploy an analytical weapon is just as vital as knowing how to use it. So the crucial point is understanding the specific conditions for each tool. You pull out MISE for totally ambiguous problems, poorly defined scope, or when stakeholders are just arguing over what the issue even is. You switch to root cause analysis when the symptoms are painfully visible, but previous fixes keep failing because the underlying cause is hidden. And you lean heavily into hypothesis-driven approaches when speed and efficiency really matter, and you actually have the data available. Ambiguity, visibility, and data availability. That is your selection guide. Section 5. Deep dive, SaaS renewals, proving the case with data. Let's launch into our second investigation, focusing heavily on this final, most rigorous stage of our detective narrative, proving it all with hard data. Here's the setup. A major subscription software company is bleeding cash. They're experiencing a sudden, totally unexplained decline in renewals. The client is super stressed. Where do we even begin? Well, using MISE, we'd initially break this massive, scary problem down into manageable, logical buckets. Think product features, pricing tiers, service quality, and the onboarding experience. Once we've got the structure, we run our RCA within those buckets and check out what the clues reveal. We find stable pricing, so we can cross that off, but we uncover a huge spike in complaints about a brand new user interface, right alongside longer service response times. Suddenly, our RCA is pointing a massive spotlight directly at this new UI as our prime suspect. Now, to formulate and test our hypothesis, we have to translate these abstract statistics into real business impact. Our dependent variable, the thing we're trying to explain, is renewal status. Did they renew or churn? Our independent variables, the clues, are the UI version, usage metrics, and customer type, like enterprise versus SMB. Why do we need all of those? Because to truly convict the new UI, we absolutely must control for historical factors to isolate the UI-specific contribution to the churn. To rigorously interrogate this data, we don't just eyeball a spreadsheet. No way. We use highly sophisticated statistical tools. We might run a difference in proportions test, use a logistic regression to estimate exact probabilities, or do a full cohort analysis. And this brilliantly illustrates the power of that approach. Just look at the difference. The pre-UI cohort had incredibly high renewals, but the post-UI cohort, drastically lower. By controlling for all those other factors, we statistically prove that the group exposed to the new UI renewed at a significantly lower rate. We didn't just guess it was bad, we proved it in a data-driven court of law. By modeling this into a clear equation, where renewal status equals the combined effect of UI experience, usage, and firm size, we literally lock in our data-driven approach. Breaking the world down into this math strips away all the emotion and the typical office politics, perfectly isolating exactly what went wrong for the client. Which brings us to Section 6, Conclusion and Recap, the transferable skill set. Because everything we've walked through today, it isn't just some neat trick for software companies. It's a completely universal workflow. I want to highlight this quote because it perfectly summarizes the core philosophy of our entire explainer. Every client problem differs, but the fundamental approach remains consistent. Structure the problem, investigate underlying causes, and test reasoning with data. Whether you're dealing with supply chain failures, marketing ROI, or employee retention, this integrated sequence of MISE, RCA, and hypotheses is exactly what empowers fast, undeniable decisions. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. The next time a massive, messy, ambiguous challenge lands on your desk, you now have the ultimate consulting arsenal. The only question is, how will you apply this 3-step investigative sequence to unravel your team's next massive challenge? Think about it, start structuring your buckets, and go find that real root cause. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.